And then last comment on this slide is, as I mentioned in compliance, for each of the verticals, there are some specific UI frameworks, there can be, that are unique to that vertical. So for example, Netbook has a specific UI framework. Handset uses the MeeGo Touch framework. So those are additional components that are layered on top of the core, but they are required for MeeGo compliance for that device category. So if you're building a MeeGo handset, you would need to include the MeeGo Touch framework. You don't need to include the rest of this. The rest of this is referenced, but you need to include that specific component. So when we release the MeeGo compliance spec, we'll describe those specific components. So there'll be a core section that will talk about compliance with the MeeGo core, and then there will be vertical specific chapters, so a handset chapter, a netbook chapter, and so on, that will talk about requirements that are specific to that device category. So that's how that will be done. Just a little bit more on the reference user experience, because I think this is an area that, there's been a lot of innovation going on around the user experience. And there's some common themes that you'll see if you've looked at the netbook user experience and the handset user experience that come out, some commonality. One of them is around this integrated and personalized social networking. So building social networking into the core user experience, really exposing, what are my friends doing on Facebook or Twitter or, whatever your favorite social network might be, exposing that directly in the user interface. You see it in the netbook with this, kind of social networking feed, and that theme also comes across in the handset user experience. It's bringing the social networking directly into the UI. Of course, full internet experience, rich media consumption, based on standards. That's a core theme that you'll see across these reference user experiences. And then finally, really important is being customizable. Taking these references as a starting point and being able to customize them and brand them to however you want on your own device. So very important that we make these usable as a starting point for people building products. They're not an end in their own. And of course, we're also using a lot of animation. If you've seen any of these in action, we're trying to make them very dynamic, very visual, using 3D accelerated graphics, which is available, across the MeeGo platforms via OpenGL. So I want to talk now a little bit more about what's available if you're an application developer and you want to develop on MeeGo. This is the place that you should start in terms of MeeGo.com for more information on developing applications. Just MeeGo.com/developers. You'll find a lot of information about the MeeGo architecture and more details on the API and how you can get started. You can also download the SDK from this webpage. In terms of the APIs, I mentioned there's some new things coming in 1.1, so a little more detail on that. We will, of course, have the core Qt library. It's version 4.7 is what we're targeting for MeeGo 1.1, which is kind of the latest and greatest core Qt stack. MeeGo Touch Framework, which is what's being used in the handset. This is the touch-optimized. You can think of it as a layer on top of Qt with touch-optimized widget set. And support for multi-touch and so on. So this is a complementary set of technology to the core Qt library set. The MeeGo Web Runtime, which is for sort of rapid web-style application development, so sort of widget-style apps. You can develop those using common web development tools and then run them in this Web Runtime, which is based on WebKit, supports HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, of course, as the core development languages. And that's something that will be in place for MeeGo 1.1 as well. So you have Qt for native application development, and then the Web Runtime for web-style runtime app development. And then finally, we have also some new APIs collectively called Qt Mobility. And this is an API set that gives you access to some of the things you need on a device. So for example, access to the common contacts database, access to location information, access to connection management. So this is an evolving set of APIs. So we'll have an initial set of APIs that will come into 1.1, and that will continue to grow over time. So there'll be more and more of these mobility-style APIs that will be added to the MeeGo API set and allow you really to do more and more of your programming within Qt itself. In terms of the SDK, there's also a lot of new things coming to the SDK. We've got, if you look at the development cycle or the app life cycle from develop, debug, package, and distribute, you'll be able to do application development on both Linux and on Windows. And that will also include the ability to run your application in a virtual machine environment. So you can actually run the MeeGo stack and then run your application on top of that inside of a virtual machine. So if you don't have access to a device, that allows you to test your application in a real device environment. This also does support OpenGL acceleration. As I mentioned, our user experiences do take a lot of advantage of 3D acceleration in the user experience. So this was an important feature to allow you to get good performance when you're running the device stack on a workstation. So that's something that's new and coming in the 1.1 version. In addition to that, we've also added, this is new as well, packaging support. So obviously as you're doing your application, you're going to develop it, you're going to debug it, and then you need to package it in the right format so it can go into application stores. So these tools will help you to package your application into an RPM package. RPM is the packaging technology used in MeeGo. So we've got some tools there, and those will integrate into Qt Creator. Qt Creator, if you're not familiar, is the core IDE for developing Qt applications. And we've got all of these tools really are plugging into that Qt Creator environment. And then lastly, we have the ability to do application publishing, also as a plug-in to Qt Creator. I think initially it's probably going to go to this community repository, which is essentially, if you're doing an open source app, you can publish it directly into this community repository. And over time, we will also add the ability to publish into various app stores. So sort of a one-click, I want to make my application available in the OV store or in the AppUp store. Just push a button, and you'll be able to publish it via the development tool. So a lot of new things coming in the 1.1 SDK. And this will be released along with the 1.1 release in October. So all of these things are under active development. If you're interested in getting involved, there are, this is all being done in the open, so you can certainly get involved in the development as well. This was covered as well, I think, by Jim in terms of the flow of code. So I'll maybe just make a couple of comments on how this flow works. If you look at the left-hand side of this page, this is kind of the MeeGo project right here. This is what we're doing in MeeGo. We're pulling from open source projects. We're pulling from things that are unique to MeeGo, and we're creating this MeeGo distribution. And we're producing reference images, and we're producing builds of MeeGo. The right-hand side of this is sort of the consumption side of MeeGo. So if you're someone that wants to build a MeeGo device, you go to MeeGo.com, you can grab the MeeGo stack, you can add to that additional components like codecs and closed source components. And that can be done either by an operating system vendor, say Novell, for example, or Wind River, or it could be done directly by the device manufacturer. So you really have the flexibility to do that either way. And then finally to integrate that and create a final device. So that's kind of the basic flow of creating MeeGo on this side and consuming MeeGo on that side. And of course there's kind of a feedback loop that's not shown here, but people that are consuming are also typically contributing. So both Intel and Nokia were consuming and contributing at the same time, which is, I think, the ideal situation. We want people to be both consuming and contributing if possible.